There we go. I would now like to introduce APALA's National President, Brady Coma, to give us some introductory remarks before we meet our speakers and get a chance to hear about their leadership journeys. Brady, go ahead.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you to Maggie, Vivian, Christina, all of our staff and board members who are on for today's event. I'm very happy to be with you. I see a lot of familiar faces, and I can't wait to see you all in person in our upcoming months as we move back to what we hope is the regular, right? The new regular. Gosh, you know, the timing of this is so appropriate because I literally just got off of a call with one of my members at SCIU UHW here in California. She's a Filipina healthcare worker, a Kaiser employee who's coming out on lost time to talk about the upcoming election in June. And she took the time to share her story as we were practicing her rap. And we started talking about why are you doing this work, right? Because it's not easy talking to members, to workers, and getting folks to do something above and beyond their 8 hours or their 10 or 12 hours a day. It's not easy to ask folks to sacrifice time away from their family or from their home or from their R&R that they need, that we all need to get up the next day and be 100%. And she talked about why politics was so important to her and how it's changed her life. And when I think about how the union shows up for each of us in different ways and how it calls to us to be a vehicle for change, I think of the many, many different faces of our leaders who've either trailblazed the path for me and for us, or who are trailblazing paths for the future. And she asked me, why am I doing this work? Why did I decide to leave a very interesting assignment at our international union to come work in the field and deal with a lot of the challenging and intimate problems, right, that they have to face as Kaiser employees, as healthcare workers in a pandemic. And I told her that I decided to come to UHW because it's the one union in the country that has the highest density and percentage of API members. And that's because we're in California, number one, and number two, we're a healthcare union, right? Where the proportion of APIs is higher relative to the general workforce. And when I take a look at the leadership of all of our different unions across the country, be it a local union or an international union, I know that our leadership doesn't reflect our growing numbers as Asian Pacific Islanders. And that's what this is about. If unions are going to be the vehicles for change, for whatever we want to change, we have to be at the table, we have to be present, and we have to be leaders. And if we're not inserting ourselves into those positions, we're not doing our jobs as APALA. APALA is not just about us creating space for us, by us. APALA is also about demanding space in our own unions to make sure that we're represented and that we have a voice. And so that's why when I read AAPIs in labor, it's our time to lead. By God, it's been our time to lead for decades, hasn't it? I don't know where this journey is going to take me or this journey is going to take us. But I do know while I'm here and while I'm blessed enough to have a position at APALA, I want to make sure that I'm going to do everything that I can to support the work that we have all committed to do, which is to fight for representation, which is to have power, grow our power in service to justice. And what does justice mean? For right now, justice means that our parents, our grandparents, our siblings aren't being terrorized in the streets, aren't being shot and targeted, aren't being called racial slurs. And I was telling my member, not until we take leadership positions in our own organizations will the labor movement take seriously stopping AAPI hate, right? Because right now we're invisible. Sure, a lot of our unions are taking the opportunity right now during Asian Pacific American Heritage Month to post something. But what does that do? What does signing on to a letter of support actually change? When the labor movement said that we wanted to win healthcare for all, what did we do? We organized, we invested, right? And we won healthcare for all. When we said that we wanted to increase the minimum wage to at least $15 an hour, what did we do? We resourced it, we organized, we made $15 the minimum wage, or we're on our way to doing that. And so when we say that we want to stop AAPI hate, I want to see the labor movement stop AAPI hate. I want to see them organize. I want to see them invest. I want to see them follow through and lead in that area. So I'm taking a look. I've spoken way too long. I'm waiting for the flag, but I want you all to know that I appreciate all of the work that you do. I'm excited for our new generation of leaders who are rising up. I'm excited to meet so many firsts, right? So many firsts. We still have a lot of firsts to check off, but by God, we're going to do it. So thank you all. I appreciate you. Happy Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. Stay safe, and we'll see you on the streets.
Thank you so much, Brady, for opening up this important leadership panel for AAPIs in the labor movement. As Brady mentioned, this is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, but it is also APALA's 30th anniversary. And APALA is an important place for, AAPI labor leaders and aspiring leaders to build that leadership and to practice that leadership. We have chapters and we have, various working groups and ways to get involved, throughout the country and to meet more inspiring folks. And that's part of what we're going to do today. So I'm excited to introduce you to three amazing labor leaders who happen to be AAPI. So first I'll introduce Bernie Burnham. President Burnham is the president of the Minnesota AFL-CIO and is the first Pacific Islander to hold that role. President Burnham is an educator who started as an elementary school teacher in the Duluth Public School District. She became heavily involved in the labor management process and eventually was elected president of the Duluth Federation of Teachers. Most recently, Burnham co-chaired the Minnesota AFL-CIO's Committee on Racial and Economic Justice and served as Vice President of Education, Minnesota. So we're excited to welcome you today here, Bernie, and excited to get to some questions. Next, I'd like to introduce an amazing young leader, Diana Noinala. let's see. Diana is the vice president of the Machinist Local Lodge 751F in Seattle, Washington. As a young worker who started at Boeing in 2018, she became more involved with the union when she noticed challenges that she and others were having with management. She began her leadership journey as a shop steward and has also held roles as a trustee for Local F and a delegate for Machinist Women's Committee as well. And finally, I'm excited to welcome Tevita Uhatafe. Tevita is a member of APALA's National Executive Board. He serves as a vice president of the Texas AFL-CIO, first vice president of the Tarrant County Labor Council, and a legislative representative for the Transport Workers Union Local 513. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again. Let's jump right in. The first question is, why are you a leader in the labor movement? What inspired you to get involved with the union? So first, I'd like to ask Bernie, if you wouldn't mind responding first.
Sure. I, as a teacher, it became important to me to be part of labor. I quickly recognized that in our city in Duluth that teachers were there, but they didn't even realize they were part of the labor movement. And it wasn't a conversation that we'd ever had. So it was something that I learned along the way and found out how important it was to have, relationships with the local leader or local labor community. We were fortunate enough to work closely with them as I became a president, and they helped us pass some referendums that were necessary. As you all know, education's sorely underfunded, like many things in public service. And they also helped us turn over a school board that was unfriendly. So making those connections and then working in turn with them to make sure that we elected local leaders, state leaders, federal leaders that supported unions and supported labor was important. At that time, a lot of my work, and I still say a lot of my work, is grounded in what are we doing for children as we move into the future, because we know if they are first taken care of prior to school, and then as they move into school and get a good education, they become the leaders of tomorrow. And so if we can make sure that the base of our communities, education for children, is well supported, that's only going to lead to better communities as a whole. And I say this all the time, but no matter where we live, what we look like, who we work for, or who we love, everybody deserves a good life. And we are definitely in the lead as labor and union members in helping to make that happen.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bernie. Diana, same question to you. Why are you a leader in the labor movement, and what inspired you to get involved?
Well, thank you. Thank you again for inviting me to this panel. At a young age, I was exposed to the labor movement. When I was 12 years old, my dad brought me to the picket line for Boeing's strike, for the 57-day strike that Boeing had. And as a child, I had the opportunity to see people of all backgrounds gather for one cause, and it was inspirational. Collectively, I witnessed men and women of all different races, different backgrounds, and different creeds gather to speak about equality and fairness. And people were fighting for their worth because they knew that big corporations weren't going to easily give them what they wanted and what they deserved. This was my spark that ignited my passion towards the labor movement. And once I started my own career path, I seen labor injustices personally and just firsthand at every corner. Before becoming a machinist, which is what I am now, IAM 751 is the machinist union. Before I was a machinist, I was working my day-to-day jobs, random retail jobs, and one of them was actually in bridal. And in the bridal industry, the company I worked for was founded in 1930, and they sold this dreamy story about family and memorable life moments. And I watched this 87-year-old company destroy itself in the span of a year. That was how long I worked for this company. In the year that I worked for them, they started to focus more on greed and their profit margins instead of the memorable life stories and these people's moments in their life. And so when they started to focus on money, they drove their company to the ground. And it was just the most eye-opening experience I ever had. I ever had with a big labor movement and a big corporation too, because when they filed for bankruptcy, it was devastating. I got a day's notice. The same day I found out they filed for bankruptcy was the same day I lost my job, and I had to tell all these customers that I signed documents and signed their checks on, that they weren't getting their addresses anymore. So it was just really devastating to see. They left employees high and dry, and they left customers high and dry, and there's still currently over $20 million worth of claims across the US by brides and other people still unpaid. So after witnessing this unfold firsthand and seeing the loss of the company I'm working for now, Boeing, lose their pension, it was eye-opening to know that they're going to take away anything they can and anything to give them more money. So that's why I wanted to become a labor leader. And I knew nothing is given. So I wanted to share my story and this understanding of how easily big corporations and greed can destroy lives of everyday working people. And that I understand that the labor movement is a continuous fight for equality and fairness for all and the next generation to come. So I believe in the labor movement, and I believe that we are people that understand injustices and understand that it's about the future. So that's why I wanted to become a labor leader and show that you don't have to be tenure or, very experienced to become a labor leader. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Diana. Got us a little riled up in the chat, I think. So Tevita, same question to you. Why are you a leader in the labor movement, and what inspired you to get involved with your union?
Thank you, Christina, and thank you to everyone who's joined us this afternoon. So I pretty much stumbled into a leadership role more than anything. So I was part of this big hiring boom after an airline merger between two major airlines here in the States. So following that hiring boom, I entered the shop floor, and before all this is known, like there's a big AAPI presence in the airline industry. Most of us work for the airlines because it's one of the cheapest ways to get back home or visit family, around the States, because we spread out once we get here, right? So anyways, as I'm starting my career, I realized that most of the Tongans who work at the airport, or the older generation, they were known as the workers because all they did was just shut up and did the work. So that kind of led me to believe that maybe they just didn't understand that sometimes people were just taking advantage of them because they didn't say anything. They just went out and worked. So I began with, I just started translating different union newsletters or things like that to people who thought, who wanted to understand what was coming out from the local. And it just went from that to helping out the young workers kind of understand the contract, or, have an idea of what the language was heading towards. that way we can kind of navigate it together, because the interpretation and the language was key, especially when you're young, trying to understand your job while also adhering to the contract. And it just kind of morphed into more, I started taking on more responsibility, because I think the local saw that there was some kind of potential. The only problem was there was nobody who looked like me that was doing the work. So I was constantly having to outwork myself, because there's nobody else there that they can kind of, I guess, match up to see if I was really worth the investment. So, and that's still a struggle, but it's also what I feel like it's making me a stronger leader, is that I'm willing to do the work that nobody else is going to do. And also that it means something to me if it's going to help somebody else out. So, doing the grunt work was going to be something I was going to do and continue to do. But the leadership role now, being a vice president, being newly elected to a role with the state Fed, and also being first vice president for my CLC, people are still trying to figure out who AAPI people are. And I'm here to tell them, here's a face to this question you have. I don't have all the answers, but we can certainly find out together, what the issues that we have, what issues that are affecting us on the workplace, and also to be there to let those who we represent as AAPI, give them full knowledge of the labor movement so they can understand what they're getting themselves into. Because yeah, it's nice to have the benefits of work protections and everything, but if you really don't understand it, and you get taken advantage of, like I seen when I first started working, it's just it doesn't seem like it's fair until everybody's on the same page. So I think my role, which is very recent, leader, is going to continue to morph into a way where I can continue to help people. We can get on the same page and move forward. But being a leader, especially a young leader, it's not easy, especially for me being very new to my role, and the seniority in our profession goes into the 40s and 50s. So you have a lot of people with tenure there who haven't seen somebody with this likeness in a role that's telling them what they can do or helping them out. So there's still barriers that need to be kind of broken down, but I think I'm kind of ready for it, because I think I've already went through their gauntlet, and now I'm finally having a real voice in my workplace, and on behalf of my workers and my coworkers. So
Awesome. Thank you, Tevita. So our next question is, what qualities, skills, or experiences are essential in your leadership practice? Did you come by them naturally, or did you have to cultivate them over time? So I'll do the same order. I'll call on Bernie first.
All right. Well, I think, I've been told along the way that I have a calming presence. I'm not a person who is loud, or when I first started being a leader of my local union, people were kind of unnerved by that, because they were used to other people in the past pounding on the table and, being loud and kind of being a bully. And that's just not who I am. So it was a whole change for everybody to watch a leader who would sit and listen for a while before responding. Working with the school district is very interesting, because there's administration and, there's a top level, then there's principals, middle level management, and then there are educators and all the folks that work in our schools and in our systems. So when people didn't like what was going on, they expected me to go and scream, which I didn't do. And I often said that that's just not the way you get your way. Maybe it worked in the past. It doesn't work anymore. People don't want to listen to someone scream at them. I'm a good listener. I I respond to people as soon as I can. I'm finding that in this role, I'm struggling with that a little bit because it is so fast and furious all the time. But I try really hard to return messages to people or to call them back as soon as possible. It's one of the things that used to drive me crazy when I send an email or leave a call and not hear from somebody for a long time. I think it's important that people know that you've at least heard them. And if you can't have a deep conversation at the moment, you can say, listen, let's schedule a time to sit together. I'm pretty good at pulling people together. Like I said, we were able to get educators who didn't think they were part of the labor movement, who didn't think politics affected their jobs, was able to get a lot of people on knocking on doors and having conversations and reaching out to make sure that our voices were heard. I always thought it was really important to involve our younger leaders too, and we were lucky enough to have a grant from Education Minnesota and the National Education Association to put together a group of younger, newer educators so that they could begin to say what was important to them in their field. And I said to them over and over, if you look at our executive board sitting at this table, everybody's going to retire pretty quick. This will be yours. What are you going to do and what do you want? I think that's really super important to always be getting the next group of people ready. I want someone there so that when I'm ready to go and do other things, our unions are going to be okay. Our locals are going to be fine. You need to grow leadership. On the other end of the spectrum, retirees are also very important. They do a ton of work that those of us who are busy in the day-to-day stuff can't do, but when it comes to elections and those kind of things, they're there for us. They do phone banking, they do door knocking, and they do a lot of the things that they're committed to still. And so they still have a great voice, and they're also prepping for us in the future. It's hard to see and hard to think about sometimes that you're going to get to that point in life, but trust me, it comes a lot faster than you think it is. So I think we've got to value everybody. We've got to value, our members of color. We've got to value our LGBTQ. Everybody deserves a voice at the table, period. And I have always tried to ensure that wherever I'm at, that I hear those voices and that we raise them and encourage people to participate and find their role in leadership. It's one of the most important things is identifying new leadership. It's good to turn things over sometimes. And I don't think anybody should ever sit in a role. My former president in Duluth was there for 34 years. He did great work, but that didn't encourage anybody else to come to the table, and I think that's important. There's a lot more people than a handful of folks who run the show for 10, 15 years. You got to be moving and you got to be open to that. So those are some of the things I think that I bring.
I love that. It's, new ways of being a leader, I think, are really important for us to think about. So yeah, same question to you, Diana. What quality, skills, or experiences are essential in your leadership practice? Did you come by them naturally or did you cultivate them over time?
Essential qualities and skills in my leadership practice would be flexibility and time management. As a leader, you must be able to go with the flow of things while at the same time manage your own daily deadlines. And I've learned that as a leader, you wear many hats. So for example, I'm not just vice president of my local lodge. I'm also a delegate for different labor councils. I am a part of Martin Luther King Labor Council, Coalition of Labor Union Women, the Washington Machinist Council. I'm also a chair for the fundraising committee and a delegate for the women's committee. So, for me, it's really essential to be flexible when it comes to the many hats that I wear in managing my time efficiently, especially. Another essential skill would be strong communication skills, to have the ability to motivate and inspire others. This is key to know how to connect and engage with people efficiently and communicate, visions into reality. It's essential to also have empathy towards others, I believe, leading by example, and create a culture of unity and inclusion. Great leaders don't just tell you what to do, they also show you how it's done. And, I don't think that I came by them naturally, but I feel like I've cultivated these skills over time. I'm still a work in progress, and I've come to understand that, there's always room for growth, and it's critical to always continue to challenge to grow yourself and develop these skills. This doesn't only just help you in your career, but it helps you in your personal life and your relationships too. And I also realized that there's a lot of things that I did at a young age that kind of helped me for this. It helped me develop some of these skills. I did dance and cheer competitions as a kid, so that kind of prepared me for the spotlight. Beauty pageants also, but that helped me prepare for, public speaking and social events. And I also am able to create positive connections with people and recruit them to the same cause that I'm supporting, or, create these great connections and relationships to grow whatever you're trying to do. I feel like anyone could learn these skills needed to become a leader, no matter how old or young you are. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Diana. I think your perspective is particularly important, which is like, you don't already have to be a perfect leader with
Yes.
fully formed skills to start leading. And I think, as Bernie was mentioning, like, even once you start, it's a new ball game, and you might have to adjust some practices that you had in the past. So appreciate that. Lastly, we'll go to Tevita. We'd love to know your qualities, skills, and experiences, which are essential in your leadership practice. Did you come by them naturally, or did you have to work on them?
Okay, so Christina, so I stumbled onto my role, my leadership role, right? So everything was acquired, because it was not like this is what I was aspiring to be. I was just trying to put food on my table when I first started. And then, 7 years later, I'm doing all this other stuff all over the country. But, I think one of my qualities, in which I care very deep for, because it intertwines my upbringing, my tradition, my living tradition as a Tongan. What we grew up knowing at home um, was that if at any point your family member needed you, and this was back in the islands, right? So we would drop everything and go, right? If there was like a funeral or anything that was going on in the family. Well, here in the States, I kind of morphed that into any union needs my help, I consider it family. So then I'd show up to their events. So, it started off with me traveling within Texas. And then before you know it, last year, for example, when that big strike wave they were talking about was going on, I hit every single major picket line, at least one of their picket lines, from John Deere to Nabisco to Kellogg's. I went to one of those locations in every part of the country to show that AAPI solidarity, that we show up. And also to show them that there are other union members that don't exactly look like them, but are doing the work that is necessary to make sure that everybody has a voice on the table. So, I mean, I guess being being prepared and kind of enthusiastic to the idea of doing the work, I think that's one of the qualities, along with what I think is a different kind of solidarity, one where we show up no matter what the fight is, and we show our support. I think that kind of solidarity is something that we can show the whole country. And I'm just glad that I can do that. And I know there's going to be more of us doing that as we start to come out of the shadows and take these leadership roles.
Yes, showing up is an essential leadership quality of Tevita's. You will see him on almost any picket line. I'm convinced. So our final formal question for the panelists are: what advice would you give to APALA members who are thinking about stepping up in their workplaces and in their unions? What are the action steps, barriers, and other things you wish you knew beforehand? Bernie, would you kick us off?
Sure. Okay, so starting with advice, and this is what I often told brand new teachers who didn't know whether or not they should join the union. I'd say join the union. That's the first thing you should do, period. Show up to meetings. Don't sit back and wait for information to come to you secondhand. If you want to know what's going on, be there, be in the forefront. Start the work. If you're asked to do something, and I didn't ask people to do outrageous things. I'd say, give me an hour, give me 2 hours. That's all I need you for. And that way you introduce them, little by little to the work that was important. And that's how you find the people who are going to lead and the people who are going to continue to be in the fight with you. Have those one-to-one conversations and really sit back and listen. We don't always have to be the ones talking. You got to hear people's stories. You need to know what makes them motivated. So that's important. And then encourage people. If you see someone who you think has the potential, I think everybody has the potential, but if you really see someone who stands out and can lead, I think that's when you say to them, look, you can do this. I mean, I'm already started on, newer, younger leaders to say, you need to be the ones who are leading this in the future. I think that's really important. Action steps, barriers, other things I wish I'd known before. And I'll tell you what, I started this work at 40. That's when I became a teacher. So I guess I didn't really feel aware of barriers at 40 years old. You have a mindset. And I went into education knowing what I thought was right. I already had children of my own, had volunteered in schools and done a lot of work with PTAs and that kind of thing. So I guess I was fortunate, and I say this over and over. I can only remember 1 or 2 times in my life where my color or my background really maybe held me back a little bit or identified me for something that really wasn't, who I was. So again, I think, coming in when I did, and my mother was a union member. We didn't talk about a lot at our house because my dad was a chef at a private club, and not that it was discouraged, but they had such different work lives, but my dad being raised in Hawaii and Filipino heritage, and my mother an immigrant from Ireland, believed in really helping people. And that's how they raised my brother and I, to always step up. If you saw someone getting hurt or someone getting picked on, you better step up and you better say something. So that's, my brother now works with retired military and military folks, and I work in the work I do. So we're both of service, we feel, to many people. So I think I can't, again, I guess I wasn't aware at 40 of, maybe some things you still run into as a woman. You run into men who want to tell you everything. And I see a little bit of that in the labor movement, obviously, as I'm going out and making visits to all of these folks who are part of the, affiliates of the AFL-CIO. There are definite mindsets out there, as you can well imagine. And, people want to talk about bread and butter issues. They don't want to talk about all the things that we all feel are important, and recognizing the systemic problems that we have within unions as well. They're still there, obviously, very solid. But I think every day that you have a conversation with someone and you work to change them a little bit, it might take a long time. For some people, it might be a light bulb, right? So I guess that's all I have to say on all of that. And I sure am happy to be here with Tevita and Diana.
Awesome. Thank you, Bernie. Diana, what advice do you have for us APALA folks who are thinking about stepping up in our workplaces and unions? What are the things you wish you knew before you jumped right in?
Advice I would give to anyone thinking of stepping up in their workplace and unions would be just to do it. To take these challenges head on and reach for the stars, and don't second guess yourself, because you're not alone. I believe that everyone in their career has experienced a moment where they recognize something could improve or be better. However, instead of changing things or trying to improve it, people are deterred by the phrase, this is how it is, or it's always been this way. Instead of accepting the phrase, I challenge people and challenge the phrase by asking the question, why? Why? So challenge your workplaces and take the steps towards improvements and speak up. More than likely, you're not the only one, and you're not the only one experiencing these same things. You know, we spend our lives in these careers and give our precious time to these workplaces. So step up and strive for improvement, not only for yourself, but for the next generation to come. You know, give more meaning to the time you're spending in these workplaces by supporting the union and their cause, because you know, I always have been told you are the union. I had the privilege of growing up in a union household, and my dad showed me I'm second generation union. So I know you are the union. And I've also heard the phrase a lot from my own union. The union is made up of those who show up. Tevita was talking about that too. And, you know, to me, I want to be the one that shows up. So I say, show up and be the one that's present. You know, an action step I would advise anyone considering stepping up is to find a mentor, someone you're comfortable with and that you can lean on for advice. I think it's critical that you build your own circle of trust, to lean on for help when striving for your own goals and tackling labor issues head on. Something I wish I knew beforehand, which is a message that I'm trying to push on to anyone I can now, is to not wait. You know, you don't have to know everything, and it's okay to learn things on the fly. You don't have to be in these careers for 10 to 20 years to become a labor leader, because look at me, I'm proof of it. You know, I started my career at Boeing in 2018, and now I'm the vice president of my local lodge. So that's something. It's okay to learn things on the fly, and it's okay to be a fresh face, because your perspective is just as valuable as the other person with longer tenure than you. You may come across some barriers like I did with being a fresh face or a female, because I'm the first female, or actually not the first, but I'm the first Asian in my position for vice president. But, you know, some people also called unions a boys club, but I challenge that norm. So challenge and be the change and lead by example, and be the leader that creates more leaders, because, you know, that's the way to do it. Don't expect others to do the work, and don't expect to be given anything, because nothing ever gets done that way. And I believe that truly in my heart. You have to put in the work yourself, and you have to give meaning to the work you're doing every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. And then lastly, Tevita, what's your advice for APALA members who are thinking about stepping up in their workplaces and unions? And what did you wish you knew beforehand?
Cool, thank you. So we heard that Bernie's the first PI elected in her position as in the state Fed as the president. And we just heard that we just learned that Diane is the first Asian female elected to a vice president role in her local. So let's think about it. These guys are firsts. So don't be afraid to be the first, because chances are, if you're the first one, it's gonna be very lonely, because you're gonna be the first one to do it. But just know that you're opening doors for somebody else. So just remember that, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, I wish I knew earlier, being the first Tongan to have a voice in the labor movement, is to, you know, a lot of times it's lonely because you're the only one. So like Diane said, build a support system. I built my support system through my CLC, through my state Fed. So I challenge people who are only locked down to their locals to kind of freelance, if you will, into the CLC, into your local area labor council, or to the state Fed. Learn about the issues, because they're going to be way more issues at the table from those levels that you may have missed out on, that's not being put out on the news or it's not readily available. So that's one thing. I mean, you know, there are many things, many reasons to step up, but you know, this is the 30th year of APALA. There should be more of us in prominent roles than there are now. So, I mean, let's say within the next 10 years, when we come back and do this Zoom call, there should be double the amount of leaders sharing their story, because it's going to be their story that we're going to use on the time when we are not feeling like we are strong enough to move on. It's going to be their stories that are going to inspire us to move beyond that. Thank you.
Yes, the call to action from Tevita. I'm here for it. Thank you all so much. I'm going to change this view to gallery view, I hope. Audience, let's throw some reaction emojis to show appreciation for our panelists for being with us today. You could also put it in the chat. Really appreciate Bernie, Diana, and Tevita talking to us about their leadership journeys, hearing about their experiences and their encouragements. Some takeaways that I heard is step one, show up. You don't have to know everything, but showing up and asking questions and asking for someone to teach you what you're curious about is a form of leadership. And I think if we just stop there, or if we start there, don't stop there, start there, and you know, we'll be well on our way to what the vision that Tevita just laid out for us. So that being said, Vivian, I'm wondering if you could screen share the Jamboard quickly. So throughout this workshop, we've been reflecting in our Jamboard. We have our introductions, and can you take us to the second page, Vivian? Yeah, so we were